Thank you to Marvel Dice Throne for sponsoring today's video. Marvel Dice Throne is a fast and fun board game fit for all ages. Whether you're just looking for an exciting game date night, a fun family challenge, or to take on your own Avengers team of board game enthusiasts, Marvel Dice Throne is right for everyone. Each player selects one of 8 heroes to face off in head-to-head battles to see who earns the right to take the throne. Gameplay involves strategically rolling dice to activate special abilities, playing unique hero cards to manipulate results, and upgrading your hero board to power your stats. Marvel Dice Throne is a game you're going to want to return to over and over again. Not only will you want to play as all 8 characters, including Loki, Scarlet Witch, Miles Morales, and Captain Marvel, you're also going to want to master each character's special skills and strategy to see how they fare against their opponents. You can support Marvel Dice Throne on Kickstarter today and reserve your copy. Check the link in the description to head over to Marvel Dice Throne Kickstarter right now and get rolling to see who takes the throne. A sequel with a lot on the line, continuing a story set forth in the original, expanding a new cinematic universe, and setting the tone for future films, all while the small production company that started it all was about to take part in one of the biggest acquisitions in entertainment industry history. Hi, I'm Pat Whalen with yet another MCU podcast, and this is Everything You Should Know, Iron Man 2. Superman 2, Batman Returns, X2, X-Men United, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, Spider-Man 2, and The Dark Knight all have one thing in common: they're sequels to successful comic book adaptations. Immediately after the release of Iron Man in 2008, Marvel Studios greenlit a sequel to join that group. As production commenced, Jon Favreau, who returned to direct and stars Tony's bodyguard Happy Hogan, had to develop a new story. Shane Black, who would eventually write and direct Iron Man 3, was brought on in an advisory role, and Justin Theroux was hired to write the script. The story of Iron Man 2 is an adaptation of one of the most famous Iron Man stories, Demon in a Bottle. This iconic comic book storyline by David Michelinie and Bob Layton was originally published in Iron Man number 120 to 128. Iron Man's armor begins to malfunction, resulting in the accidental death of a foreign ambassador. While Tony investigates the armor's failings, stress takes over and he begins drinking heavily in an attempt to forget his problems. During all this time, it's revealed that industrialist and corporate rival Justin Hammer has framed Iron Man in an attempt to ruin Stark's reputation. By the end of the storyline, Tony admits he has a drinking problem and seeks treatment. The storyline won the 1980 Eagle Award for Favorite Single Comic Book Story and is praised to this day as a quintessential Iron Man arc. It is referenced by many modern writers as one of the most influential stories and is lauded by many for its realism with which it handles the topic of substance abuse. Michelin and Layton saw things differently. They never intended to create such a culturally relevant story, saying, instead, they were just looking for the next villain. Alcoholism was the villain of the month. Heavy stuff, and not the type of topic that Marvel Studios might consider when attempting to sell toys and tickets to their PG-13 audience. So the storyline was tempered. For the movie, the writers had Tony battling a disease that was ravaging his nervous system caused by the arc reactor itself. The plot also tied in moments from another comic storyline, Armor Wars. In it, Justin Hammer has stolen the designs to Tony's Iron Man armors and is selling them to various villains. In this case, it's Whiplash, who the writer had merged with one other Iron Man villain from the comics, Crimson Dynamo. More importantly, fans of the first film were eager to learn more about the promises of the Avengers Initiative, first referenced in the teaser of the original Iron Man. And the fans found their answer when Marvel jammed the first appearance of Black Widow into the movie, as well as tying Howard Stark, Tony's father, to the origin of the clandestine agency, S.H.I.E.L.D. There's a lot going on screen, but even more going on behind the scenes. Terrence Howard, who played Tony's best friend James Rhodes, had actually been the first actor hired on for Iron Man and received the highest payday amongst the cast. But all was not well on the set of Iron Man. Reports differ on what exactly happened between Howard and Marvel. From Marvel's perspective, rumors suggest that director Jon Favreau was not happy with Howard's performance and tensions ran high on the set of Iron Man. While that has never been confirmed, Howard has spoken publicly saying, "Apparently the contracts that we write and sign aren't worth the paper that we're printed on sometimes. Promises aren't kept and good faith negotiations aren't always held up." Regardless of what happened, Howard was dismissed from Iron Man 2, and as we already know, Don Cheadle stepped into the role of James Rhodes. Cheadle joined the returning cast members Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Jon Favreau, and Paul Bettany. Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson, had his role increased from end credit tag scene to supporting character. Clark Gregg returned as fan favorite Agent Coulson. We get our first and sadly only appearance of Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer. Scarlett Johansson kicks her way into the MCU as Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, and Mickey Rourke is our main villain this time around as Ivan Vanko, aka Whiplash. Similar to the Favreau-Howard rumors, stories appeared suggesting that Rourke was a handful on the Iron Man 2 set. He pushed back on Marvel and Favreau, who he said never allowed his character to be anything more than a one-dimensional Russian villain. The film didn't have the capacity to fit in a multi-dimensional villain while continuing Toadie's story, plus setting up the next MCU films. Even cinematographer Matthew Libatique agreed, saying, "It was almost more important to establish the future characters than it was to tell this narrative." Meanwhile, Marvel Studios' parent Marvel Entertainment was in discussions to sell the business. The potential buyer, the Walt Disney World Company, who saw the value of the more than 5,000 characters under the Marvel IP. In August 2009, Disney acquired Marvel for $4 billion, a bet that more than a decade after it had closed has certainly paid off. By 2019, Disney has made more than $18 billion at the global box office. Iron Man 2 had to succeed and needed to further validate the Marvel Cinematic Universe and prove Disney's faith in the library of content, especially after the successful Iron Man but the lackluster Incredible Hulk. Ultimately, Iron Man 2 came through, earning more than $620 million at the global box office, and its opening weekend take of $128 million was enough for fifth highest grossing weekend of all time. Despite over 20 follow-up movies, Iron Man 2 still holds a top 10 record amongst other MCU films. While the years since haven't been kind to the film, with it ranking towards the bottom of most fan and critic lists, at the time of its release, it was regarded as a solid sequel that didn't quite live up to the original, but featured great action, good character development, and helped to expand the world. Paramount would continue to distribute the remaining Phase 1 films, but the Disney effect would certainly be felt immediately. However, that's a story for another time. Before we leave each other, as always, here's some recommended reading for you. Of course, there's the Demon in a Bottle storyline by David Michelinie and Bob Layton, Armor Wars 2 by John Byrne and John Romita Jr., and a handful of issues from Tales of Suspense that feature the first appearance of Black Widow, Crimson Dynamo, and Whiplash. We hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. That was everything you should know about 2010's Iron Man 2. Let me know in the comments what you think about the film and whether your opinion has changed over the years. Thanks again to Marvel Dice Throne for sponsoring today's video. Remember to check out the link in the description to support their Kickstarter. As always, I'm Pat Whalen with yet another MCU podcast on Forgotten Entertainment. We'll see you next time.